Yesterday, news broke that surprised nobody in Canada, that our Prime Minister and his wife Sophie would be getting legally separated after 18 years of marriage. After this news broke, reactions throughout Canada ranged from ridiculing the man for not only failing at leading the country, but also failing at being a husband, and on the other side, telling everyone to shut up, mind your own business, and leave the personal life of the Prime Minister and his family alone. And if we're being totally honest with ourselves, there's likely merit to both reactions. Divorce is terrible, and it's the toughest on children who have no say in the matter. That being said, the Prime Minister has made his family part of his brand, and this deals a major blow to that reputation. But one reaction that our commentariat in Canada haven't explored as much is the cultural impact of having our Prime Minister leave his wife and remain on the top job. Whether we like it or not, Justin Trudeau is as much a Canadian symbol as he is a political leader, more celebrity than statesman, if you will. Furthermore, the Prime Minister of Canada should not just be expected to lead the country through war and peace, but also to lead by example. And what example does this set exactly? You see, just like so many things in this country, the institution of marriage has collapsed. Marriage rates are declining, and according to one poll, more than half of Canadian adults feel marriage isn't necessary. And at the same time, fertility rates in Canada are plunging. A healthy society relies on healthy marriages and healthy families. Families form the bedrock of a nation. And is it too much to expect the leader of this exceptional country to be able to maintain a healthy marriage? Drop a like in the video, help us out by subscribing to the True North YouTube channel, and the comment question for the episode is this: should Canadians expect their Prime Minister to be married? Let me know in the comments, and let's get into it. Here's an example of that contrast in reactions to the news about Justin Trudeau yesterday. You've got Joe Warmington's column in the Toronto Sun yesterday, which I would tend to agree with. Sorry, but a Prime Minister's personal life is not private matter. The Trudeau's publicly announced marriage separation is not a private matter as many are claiming. Nothing about this should be off limits, even as some of my colleagues have written. They've always been a public couple, featured amongst world leaders and on magazine covers, and what made them news then does not change now. This is the reality of public life. So that's Joe Warmington in the Toronto Sun. And on the other side, you've got this reaction from a former political staffer, Mike Gibbs, he, him. The personal relationship lives of the Prime Minister and all political party leaders and members of Parliament is none of our business. Period. I don't gossip on the spouses of any party leaders, and neither should you. Which is quite an interesting reaction from Mike Gerald Gibbs, he, him, with a rainbow flag in his Twitter profile, because according to Cian Bexley's quick investigative work over at the Countersignal, well, he didn't really keep to that same standard when Stephen Harper was the Prime Minister. This is what he was writing when a Conservative was in charge. Love imagining Stephen and Lorraine's domestic life. Lorraine is exhausted with Steve's sulking. She rides horses for days if he sulks outside his designated sulk room. She also wishes Baird would stop calling. She has a better, cooler friend with cooler gaze. So as you can see, if you thought liberals would drop their double standard that they've been employing for decades when it comes to how they deal with conservative and liberal politicians, well, of course you'd be wrong, because they just would never do that sort of thing. And like I said in my intro, no Canadian was truly that surprised. It's been sort of one of those open secrets in political circles for years that Justin Trudeau and Sophie Trudeau were likely separated. And it wasn't just because photos emerged of Justin Trudeau sitting like this. It was also videos like this showing perhaps the most awkward kiss between a married couple you may ever see. I mean, if that doesn't scream loving married couple, then I don't know what does. But all kidding aside, like I said in the intro, divorce is terrible, and it's always the worst on children who will have to grow up with a broken family. But the legal separation of Justin Trudeau and Sophie Trudeau is really just a symbol of yet another failing and collapsing institution in this country, the institution of marriage. The statistics are clear. Fewer and fewer Canadians are getting married. And according to this Angus Reid poll from 2018, over half of respondents think marriage is unnecessary. Take a look at this graph from Stats Canada showing the crude marriage rate in Canada over the past 100 years. We went from a high point of 11.2 marriages per 1,000 people in Canada in 1946 down to a record low in 2020 of just over 2 per 1,000. Just over 2 marriages per 1,000 100,000 people. And although Canada's population has consistently grown over the past 100 years, marriage rates haven't kept pace at all. Excluding the pandemic year of 2020, which of course skews data, in 2019, there were 146,000 marriages in Canada. In 1989, there were over 190,000. According to census data, 4.4 million Canadians live alone. That's the highest on record. In 1981, only 1.7 million Canadians lived alone. And according to that same census, Canada's fertility rate has reached a record low of just at 1.4 children per woman. And this is not a trivial matter, it's a serious problem. In that Stats Canada report, the government writes this: if the country's fertility rate continues to decline further in the coming years, Canada could join the countries with the lowest low fertility rates, 1.3 or less children per woman, a situation associated with rapid population aging and increased stress on the labor market, public health care, and pension systems. In order to solve this problem, as you're all well aware, Canada has had to rapidly increase our population. In fact, we're now leading the G7 as the fastest growing country. The government wants to bring in 500,000 immigrants per year, and that number is only going to continue to increase. The collapse of the institution of marriage, along with other social trends, have resulted in the following outcomes: a rapidly aging population, fewer children, fewer marriages, more people living alone, and a labor shortage which has resulted in our government running to immigrants, begging them to come to our country to fill positions. Not to mention all of the secondary problems that come with all of these issues. Increased overdose deaths and addictions to drugs, spikes in crime, collapsing recruitment rates in the military. The list could go on of the problems we're facing today, which stem from a collapsing society. A society which rejects the pillars and norms that we know build good and healthy nations. According to the Saskatchewan-based divorce lawyer, 40 to 50% of marriages in Canada, first marriages in Canada, end in divorce. And 60% of second marriages in Canada are likely to end in divorce as well. Other countries around the world facing similar demographic problems, like Hungary, for example, have come up with creative policy solutions. For example, a mother in Hungary with 3 kids will pay no taxes for the rest of her life. Now, that is an example of a family policy that promotes healthy marriages, fertility, and of course, building better societies. We don't have that anywhere in Canada. In fact, both political leaders seem to be in lockstep when it comes to immigration. When do we hear anything from our political leaders about increasing fertility rates in this country and, of course, strengthening the bonds that make our communities strong? And at the core of that, of course, would be marriage. No one should be reveling in the news of Justin Trudeau and Sophie Trudeau getting a divorce. It's terrible news, not only for his own family and for his kids, but of course for the country. Sure, the Prime Minister's policies may have ruined the lives of millions of Canadians, and there's no excuse for that, and neither should there be. But as Canadians, we should want and we should expect that our Prime Minister can maintain a healthy marriage, not just because it's important for him personally, but of course it sends a strong message to the country that this is the ideal, this is what we want, and this is an example to live by. All right, time for a quick ratio of the week. The winner this week is Seamus O'Regan, Liberal cabinet minister. You see, he did a TV interview over the week and said that he really just doesn't like politicians who rile people up unnecessarily. He says, I think it's unforgivable to rile people up more than they need to be. Is anybody here going to tell this guy that he works for a man who's made a career out of riling people up unnecessarily? Who spent the last 3 years demonizing half the population in this country for not following his draconian and authoritarian mandates? For saying that the opposition were standing with those who wave swastikas and Confederate flags? And accusing a large number of the population of being the small fringe minority? Surely that's not riling up the population, is it now, Seamus? Take a listen to this clip.
I really just don't like politicians who rile people up unnecessarily. We got enough going on. Nerves are raw. I don't see the need for it. You know, I am all for civil debate. I'm all for hardened debate. I'm all for disagreement. I got no problem with any of that. I don't like riling people up for the sake of riling people up. I don't like making people more anxious than they need to be. I think it's well documented that I went through a period of depression and anxiety in my life. It is not easy, and I think it is unforgivable, frankly, to rile people up even more than they need to be right now. There's enough going on in the world.
1,165 replies to only 878 likes. Carl Harrison writes, "You literally work directly for a charlatan who spends his every waking hour riling people up." Herb Powell writes this, "The man can talk, but his words don't mean a thing. A more sincere person wouldn't breach that discussion knowing what their leader and party has done." And this one is great. "Have you considered saying this to your boss?" You know what, Seamus, that might go a long way actually to lower the temperature in this country. It might actually stop people being riled up unnecessarily if the man who does it for a living is told by someone like you. Who knows? He probably won't even listen to you, let's be honest. All right, everyone, that's going to do it for us this week on the show. Thank you so much for tuning in. My name is Harrison Faulkner, and this is Ratio.